Well, tonight's program, What You Don't Know Will Kill You, it's about the 3 black holes of preparedness. This is Foundation Class 1002. And we're repeating it because it was lost due to technical difficulties previously, and so that we were unable to post it. It'll be captured, so it'll be up for people in the future to be watching it. As always, I'm really talking about self-reliance. Some people like to use the word preparedness. We can use provident living, which is another one of my favorite terms. But you're either going to be making provisions for the future, or you end up just becoming a victim of whatever may happen. Since we all have the ability to choose, I simply tell people choose one. Well, obviously you're choosing because you folks that are here with us this evening. It really is about understanding and implementing the principles. And as you'll notice from classes you may have attended with me, I don't just give you a list of stuff to get. I'd like you to understand how and why things work, because you can figure out what you need to do. As an introduction to this, a few thoughts to have. One of them is, what is the determining factor for survival? Well, when things get, really difficult, even desperate, more than anything else, it's you. It's what you do beforehand, what you're doing during these events that's going to make all the difference in the world, whether you make it or not. And so I ask the question very often, can you face the future? From where you are right now, do you have hope about the future? Do you have confidence about the future? Very often I listen to, some of the news that's going on, and there's the Consumer Confidence Index and all kinds of things about how people are discouraged and upset. Well, there's a lot of things that may not be going the way we would like them to, but can you face the future with hope and confidence is the question. Will you learn the process? Will you live the process? And will you pay the price? Because there's a personal price. In some cases it's monetary, in other cases it's time. Those are the 2 main things that we have to give are material resources, a lot of times measured in money. The other ones are time, our energy, our effort, our focus. Well, will you make the choice? Because it comes down to this simple thought. You're either going to make the choice to do these things, and if you don't, you end up being a victim. And I'd like you to understand that when things get really, really tough, very, very difficult, victims don't survive unless somebody is there just to rescue their heinies. Okay, the truth about life, many of you have heard this before. It's just my way of looking at these things. You might want to make this statement the way that you would say it. It's simply this. There's no doubt that tomorrow will come, and there's no dispute that things happen. But how you're prepared to meet tomorrow will make all the difference in the world. If you're prepared for the worst, then no matter what happens, it will be an adventure. And I think we should so order our lives that it's more of an adventure than just going from one emergency and disaster to another. And by the way, this doesn't have to be earthquake, tornado, or some nasty thing that has broken the world around you. Just life in general has its challenges. Make it an adventure. Make it an adventure at work, and then the family goings on and difficulties that we have there, try to turn it into an adventure rather than some kind of a disaster. Well, what is it that keeps people from surviving? Now, some of these things, this is an overview class in these 3 areas. We're going to talk about these 3 black holes, so I don't dig into some of them very deeply. This is another way of getting people interested in maybe some of the things you should learn. So what are the things that keep people from doing what it takes to be ready to make it through difficult times? First off, apathy. Just like, I don't know, don't want to know, don't care to know. Please don't wake me up, it might scare me. I hear that one a lot. I don't want to talk about these things. It scares me, so I'd rather stay ignorant. We also have the list mentality. Okay, I know there's some things I need to do. Just hand me the list. I'll go buy the stuff on the list. That doesn't work out in the long run. We have the vacation mentality. People are focused on the fun things. By the way, there's nothing wrong with fun at all, but it is a matter of priorities, and sometimes it's like, boy, I'll get started on this right after our around-the-world cruise. We have the entitlement mentality, which is I pay my taxes, and I'm a part of society, and I vote, and I do all these kinds of things, and I go to church and do the things I'm supposed to do. I'm entitled for this system to help me. And one that just kind of the first cousin, married at the hip is the dependency mentality, which is, well, the Red Cross always shows up, FEMA always comes, the National Guard is there. That's what these things are for. That's what I pay my taxes for. So they're going to come help me when things get wrong. There's the American dream, and I think the American dream has changed. I won't get too philosophical on you, but it's more about, well, it's more about more is what it is. It's more, bigger, faster, shinier, whatever it is, rather than accomplishment of, shall we say, things that make a human difference, and also about, freedom and opportunity and those kinds of things. So we're focused more on climbing the corporate ladder and getting the more of the good things in life. And then we have the mental image that things will always be as they've always been. Because, heck, look at who we are. Look at this country. Look at what we've had. It's been this way for the past 2 or 3 generations. Why should it change? I'm not a prevaricator of, or a purveyor, I should say, of gloom and doom, but really about the fact that life happens is the bottom line. So I call this my tree of death when you look at that shape. And different people have different parts of those, and perhaps all of us have a little bit of it here and there, but too much will get you in trouble. When we're talking about some of the things that have occurred around the world, and you remember a little over 2 years ago, this tremendous disaster that occurred in Haiti, great loss of life and destruction to infrastructure. I simply make this statement: the people of Haiti were better prepared to deal with that level of event than the people in the U.S. are. And should the U.S. have that level of event that does that much damage and destruction and to the economy, to the infrastructure, the loss of life and those things, it'll be far worse for us than it is for them. I hope you'll understand why as we go along to talk about them or other countries and why it is that we have a serious risk. Now, the things I talk about, if you look at them wrong, if you look at them with a very negative eye, you want to quit before you really get started. You want to run away from this stuff. I hope you won't. I hope that we approach these things in a very positive way. Okay, true preparedness has to be based upon principles. You see, it's not just things to buy and tuck away and store. You need stuff, by the way. It's not just a list of things, because what you know is far more important than what you have. What's inside your head, your heart, your fingertips that you can do? I'm going to give you a very compact overview of some principles very briefly. These are covered in far greater depth in some other classes. Many of them are online, so I just touch them here to help us organize this. In fact, part of what we want to do is have an organized structure about, well, it's about bringing focus and order and efficiency to our efforts in these areas. In part, it's about getting your head wrapped around some of this stuff, because it can be very big, particularly if somebody hands you the list and says, here's all the stuff you need. But you see, if you add into it the things you need to learn, to do, and then to have, you have to organize it in such a way so you can do it effectively, because it's about maximizing the use of your time and money. It's about being as efficient and as effective as you possibly can. One of these laws, when we talk about the law of provident living, I talk about this one all the time. There'll be more on this law in just a moment, but this is the foundational law for everything: spiritual attitude, knowledge, and stuff in that order. The law of stewardship. It's why I'm here, and I suspect it's the reason why you are here, is because of stewardship. Stewardship, very simply, is this: you have the authority to act because you're alive. You have the responsibility to act because, well, you're alive. That's been handed to you, to act within the bounds of the granted authority. And this is where each one of us lives our life day by day, making the choices and taking the actions that we take, because we will be held accountable. In other words, the just consequences of every action will simply happen. And you don't get to choose that accountability ultimately. The things you do or don't do, say or don't say, the rewards will come, and they can be very positive and uplifting, or they can be very grinding and unpleasant, even dangerous and deadly. That's the law of stewardship. You have the authority, the responsibility, you will be held accountable. Parallel with that is the law of the parachute. I think we understand what a parachute is. You have to have it before you need it. You have to have it with you when you need it. You have to know how to use it, have to actually use it, and it better be of life-saving quality. We're not talking about jumping out of a plane, but when life happens, when we have some event in our life, we're talking about your attitudes, your knowledge, your skills, and the supplies, the material things that you have, because you see, the disaster simply does not care. It has no responsibility for your care and well-being. That's within your hands. That's the law of stewardship. we have these 9 areas. Now, some people may want to split a couple of these into more pieces, and that's okay. For myself, I organized them in 9 areas for everything that you need to know, do, and have is contained within them. The foundation, which is about principles, clothing, water, sanitation, nutrition, shelter, wellness, tools, and supplies, everything is there. Now, let's go to this first black hole. And the first black hole of preparedness is found, well, right within this number 1 area, the foundation. In fact, this one will get the majority of people, and it'll do it very quickly. And most people have no clue that this is a problem. In fact, they think they have it solved, and it is not an issue. And we're talking about, well, principles in this case. Now, when I talk about this foundation area, there's a whole bunch of principles, and here's 8 of them that I talk about the most commonly. There's more than that, and please understand that each of the other 8 areas has its own set of principles about how and why things work. But in this one, in this foundation area, we're going to take a closer look at the law of provident living, because this is the key. Within the law of provident living is the key to the first black hole that's going to get us into trouble. So, the law of provident living, spiritual attitude, knowledge, and stuff. In fact, we're going to take a look at 2 primary parts of this, because this is where it happens. And the real problem has to do with attitude. Most people go like, oh, yeah, sure, positive mental attitude, got to have that, you know. We're talking about your outlook here. And let's define attitude. And, you know, almost every class I do, we're going to touch on this just briefly, because attitude is so critical. See, it will determine your outlook, the way you approach things, the way that you think about them, the way that you feel about them. When things get really tough, this is going to determine whether you make it or not when things are really, really rough. It's your attitude that's going to make all the difference. So let's understand attitude just a little bit. Now, in other classes, I'll even spend more time in this, but briefly here, let's define it this way, because it's a very quick way to do it, and it's very effective. First off, attitude is how you emotionally respond or react. And please understand that there's a huge difference between responding and reacting to things. People who are reactionary usually make it worse, certainly don't help, in some cases can do dramatic things that become dangerous, even deadly. You want to learn how to respond, and the key word is respond. So it's how you emotionally respond or react to what is going on around you, especially when these things are completely, totally, absolutely out of your control. In other words, you can't change some of those things. How you're responding to them or reacting is going to make a huge difference about your outcome. And the question becomes, how do I change my attitude? How do I have an attitude that says, I'm okay no matter what? I feel good no matter what. Now, that doesn't mean that things don't hurt, or they aren't cold, or you're not hungry or thirsty, or what have you. We're talking about your emotional response or reaction to these things. You know, somebody that says, you know, oh man, if it gets to be that bad, I'd just rather be dead. Well, that's an interesting attitude. You probably get your wish when it gets that bad, because you haven't been preparing to deal with it. So you have to work on these things beforehand. And how do you change your attitude? It's actually number 3 in the law of provident living, which is knowledge. Knowledge is the key to changing your attitude. Absolutely paramount. Now, it's vitally important that we discuss, what do I mean by knowledge? I hear it said all the time. I'm sitting in my office. Behind me, I have these 3 bookshelves that are loaded with books and audios and videos and things like that, and people talk about all the knowledge that's in a library. There is no knowledge by definition. There's no knowledge in the library, because you have to understand the correct definition. You see, knowledge is not just having information. Books and videos, even this presentation, this is just information. I cannot share any knowledge with you. So what is knowledge? Well, knowledge is information, and it is information that is then multiplied by experience. It's taking the information, living it, doing something with it. In this case now, we're talking about the knowledge and understanding of things that help you change your attitude, because that's the key to making it when things get really, really tough. So we have this simple little formula I show all the time. K equals I times E. K, knowledge, equals information multiplied by experience. Okay. I want to make this statement right here to help you understand that when it gets really, really bad, when the world is upside down, when the worst thing that could possibly happen has happened and it's getting worse, if you do not have a firm spiritual foundation, remember that was number one in the law of provident living, you've got to nurture that and take care of that above everything else. If you don't have that firm spiritual foundation and you lose your attitude, what happens is, well, you quit. In a lot of cases, quit simply means you curl up in a ball, and if somebody doesn't come along to rescue you, there you are, victim of the circumstances. So what you need to do, this is what I promote very often, is that you obtain and study an attitude library. Now, last week we actually talked about library, and in that class, which will be posted online if it's not there already, you can see it real soon. We'll go into this in more depth right here, but I want to give you this overview that simply says you need to get and study and live the principles, concepts, and ideas in some of these books. The first book I talk about all the time is Deep Survival. Deep Survival, Who Lives, Who Dies, and Why. This is the textbook. It's a very, very important book. Have it and read it. And by the way, on these books, I want you to read and study them in this order. Secondly, it's Miracle in the Andes by Nando Pedrado. And it is literally the real world class study of what Lawrence Gonzalez is teaching in Deep Survival. And if you've read Deep Survival, and then as you're reading through Miracle in the Andes, you're going to go, you can say, well, he's not going to make it. He's not going to survive. And you see, and you start to understand why it is that some of these people were not making it. They survived the crash, but they didn't make it. You need to know why they did and they did not, in case you find yourself in a tough situation. By the way, it doesn't have to be a physical situation like that. In some cases, we're talking about our mental, emotional survival that can shut you down. The other book is The Raft. The Raft by Robert Trumbull, a classic, 1942. 3 airmen go down in the Pacific in February 1942. They're in a raft, hence the name. An impossible situation. As a matter of fact, Miracle in the Andes and The Raft they're impossible. You shouldn't survive those, but people did. Why did they survive? And by the way, there are other very important, classes and books and videos and those things. And in the library that I did last week that you can watch online, in the near future, if it's not there right now, it will be there. You can learn greater depth about these things. But I want to make a statement that's very simple here, since we're doing this overview, to say this. If you are not willing to buy, and I will emphasize buy, scrape up the money to get them, and study these books. That doesn't just mean read it once, been there, done that, read the book. It means study the books, go back and highlight and underline, and ideally also get the audio of these books and listen to it while you're reading after you've underlined the book. If you're not willing to do that, you're not serious about survival when it really gets tough. And I don't mean to be rude. I'm not trying to be unkind. I'm simply pointing out what I believe is something that's very important that you need to do. And no matter how busy you are or how tight the finances are, read these books in this order: Deep Survival, Miracle in the Andes, and The Raft. And what you're really wanting to do is develop within you what I call key personal B attitudes. Now, I go over this in depth in the class Surviving Against All Odds. So I'm just going to give them to you right here very briefly. You've got to have purpose and passion. You've got to have an integrity, which is about change, and humility, which is a search for knowledge. Courage, which takes us back to purpose. You see, if you have purpose and passion for the purpose, you have courage. Not that you're not afraid, it's just that you're downright committed to do what you need to do. You have to have discipline, which is about work ethic, and patience to make it all the way to the end where the outcome is, and then one that almost doesn't look like it fits, but it's a foundation for everything, and that is forgiveness. We're really talking about love. And you need to understand those and develop them and have them in your life, and they become your attributes. In the beginning, you may have to work on and actually discipline yourself. That one on the list right there, you discipline yourself to think about these things and have them until ultimately they become your disposition. This is the key to surviving, and it's really tough. So I ask the question, have you been willing to do these things? Would you be willing to do it? Would you have the books? Do you have the books? Have you gone through them? Have you learned about them? Are you willing to do what it takes, pay the personal price? You see, life will happen. Will you be ready to handle it? Things come along. They happen all the time. It's the flat tires and running out of gas. I ran out of gas just a couple of days ago. A little distracted, went by one station, thought I could make it to the next one. I didn't, and I didn't have a gas can and those things. No big deal. It was a chance for a little exercise, and I did finally get picked up, and it's no big deal. And in fact, I was happy about the thing because I've been kind of laid up, pretty inactive for about 3 weeks here, and so this was an opportunity to exercise a little bit. Will you learn to properly respond to situations rather than react and become angry or mad or blaming or whatever it is? You made me mad. Boy, we talk about that in Surviving Against All Odds, because if you're wanting to blame others, then you're just becoming a victim. So you see, the time to learn these things is now. This is when you should do them. The time, to practice these things, it's now. This is when you do these things. You don't wait. Well, when it gets really tough, I'll I'll get started on it now, because you see, when we take a look at this whole concept, if you cannot do these things now when life is good, and quite frankly, we live on a cruise ship. The entertainment is available 24/7. The food bar, the buffet is there 24/7 around us all the time. Life is so easy right now. If you can't do these things and properly respond and practice and be calm now, how's it going to be when things get really, really tough? You see, when it gets really, really bad, if you lose your attitude, it will kill you faster than anything else, and most people just kind of slough that one off. Well, I hope you start to understand why I said the people of Haiti were better prepared, because we live on this wonderful cruise ship. Those people were living just barely above ground zero. They didn't have as far to fall. It's tough on them. Didn't say it was easy. It wasn't a wonderful thing. How about us? We live in this beautiful, wonderful, opulent lifestyle. How's it going to be? Well, many people have a misplaced reliance upon material things, and it will get you into trouble very quickly. It will destroy your attitude. And one of the things I want you to do, if you haven't done this, is understand the concept that your 72-hour kit can kill you. I mean, the standard ones you go by, the list that you're given, and those things, the things that you recommend that you have by FEMA. And that's not to say you shouldn't have those things, but it's the reliance upon them. You can listen online. This is an audio that I did back in 1997. It's online, available to you for free at Safe Harbor Alliance. You can go and see right there your 72-hour kit could kill you. Log in, link in, listen to that, because you need to understand that the standard things you're taught, and if you had all those things, you bought one of those kits, you don't even know what's in the thing. Or, okay, you spread it out. The salesman said everything you need's here, and they usually tell you, like, there's 280 items. Yeah, they're counting the safety pins and the bobby pins and the Band-Aids individually, to tell you how many things that are in there. Go try to build a life out of one of those things, is the bottom line. Learn about this stuff. Now, did I say you shouldn't have a 72-hour kit? I didn't say that. But you need to have a proper evacuation kit. So is there any doubt that attitude and your misplaced dependence on things could get you in trouble? You can learn more about these things. Well, more free things that are online. Prepare to Survive No Matter What. That's Class 1001. It's free, available at Safe Harbor Alliance. Right there in the webcasts area, you go to the past webcasts. It'll be in the library section, and you can find that class. Just watch it, listen to it, send other people there. Other things where you can learn more about this, there's a DVD. It's the Part 1 on the Self-Reliant series. It's a 2-hour DVD, principle-based DVD, that you can get very inexpensively from us to study these things greater in depth. Another one that it's not available today. It will be shortly. We're editing this together, finishing it. The manual has been digitized, getting ready to go. Surviving Against All Odds. I wanted to update it because I did it back in 1994 is when I started that. We released it, I believe, in 95 or 96. And I've learned a few things, and so we've updated that. That will be available shortly. Surviving Against All Odds. Second black hole that will suck you in, and if you understand a little bit about the astronomical black hole, once you get over the event horizon, you can't fix the problem, it's too late. You're being drawn into this thing. You lose your attitude, it's too late to fix it. You need to take care of it now. The second one we're talking about is clothing. And it's so common that nobody really thinks about it, and they think, well, clothing is just something you wear. Now, there really is a whole lot more to it than that. And what we're talking about is personal portable shelter. That's what clothing is really about, your first level of protection when things break down. Now, we talk about clothing and kind of break it into 5 areas: traditional everyday wear, and expanded clothing, perspective on some things that we could call clothing, protective and specialized clothing, then hot conditions and extreme heat weather clothing, and then cold weather and extreme cold. We'll touch on these briefly. Traditional everyday wear is more about style and looks and perceived value, and making people envy you because of the label that's on your hip pocket or whatever it is. And some of it looks like that. We won't even go there. Expanded perspective. We're looking for something outside of the standard box that we think about in clothing. We're looking for answers. I want to broaden your perspective and solve some problems. Nighttime clothing we call bedding. It's sleeping bags. That's clothing. You put it on, you wear it at night because your activity is low. You want to stay warm, and it'll help you get through even very extreme conditions in the hot or in the cold when you have the proper kind of clothing. I even call that clothing. This pocket knife that's strapped to me all the time, I call it clothing because I wear it. I have it with me almost all the time. On the plane, I can't have it with me then, unfortunately, but other than that, it's with me, tied to me, because I can use it to make clothing when things, if I happen to not have what I would like to have for whatever reason, it's been destroyed, lost, or I'm separated from it, I've got a knife, I will make something from materials around me. This expanded perspective and getting into protective and specialized clothing, it's about purpose and function and application of these things, about rain and hand and hearing and eye and head and infection protection, breathing protection, keep us from being contaminated, foot and toe and insect and skin. All of these things fit into this area. Well, it's kind of an expanded perspective on clothing. When we really want to get down to the brass tacks of the things that are so critical to us, it's about people can handle mild conditions when the weather is fair and there's no big deal going on with it. But people are very poorly prepared to deal with extreme heat on their own, meaning this, that we scurry from one cool box to another cool box. Extreme heat is it's disliked, it's cursed, it's hated, it's avoided. You just want to stay away from it. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with being comfortable, but what if those things are not available? What if something breaks down, they don't work, you can't have, just the utilities are off? Simple as that. Or you get yourself stranded in your car that doesn't run anymore, so you don't have air conditioning and it is hot. Are you prepared to deal with that? Well, heat and extreme heat. And see, this is where clothing is more than just apparel, because overheating is unpleasant, it's very stressful. But serious overheating can cause injury and death. So what we're looking for, we're talking about, is protection. It's about the performance and safety and comfort. And you have to look at clothing with a little different perspective than just what does it look like, what does it cost. And some of the key areas that we're talking about in this clothing for hot weather, it's the fabric and the material. It's also the clothing features, the designs. It's some of the critical nature about hats and proper kinds of hats, and also footwear when you're out there dealing with heat and extreme heat. So the materials, the designs, and hats and footwear, critical things to understand. You see, when you're exposed to high heat, the body uses some built-in automatic systems that are to help you to reduce this overheating. And because severe overheating can cause death. So the body changes its circulation, wants to move excess heat from the outside of the body to it's from the inside of the body to the outside of the body to get rid of it. One of the things, of course, it does is perspiration to enhance the cooling by evaporation. The body metabolism also changes. It drops. We slow down some in the heat. And if you understand these things and you can help your body perform its functions properly, it goes better. So now we're talking about applying the knowledge. It's about understanding how and why these things work so that you learn these laws and you apply the laws, otherwise you suffer the consequences. So what we're really talking about, well, law of provident living. We mentioned that. That's knowledge, having an understanding of law of stewardship. That's responsibility. You have to be ready to do these things beforehand, which leads us right to the parachute, because you've got to be prepared beforehand. If you're not, you've got a problem, both in your knowledge and your physical material area. So proper clothing that's based on performance, not just style and habit and culture. We're talking about the vital idea, the knowledge, the understanding of hydration. It's critical. You can have the right clothing, but if you don't stay hydrated, it doesn't work out too well. It's about understanding the vital necessity of nutrition. And in particular, we're talking about the electrolytes that need to be in your body because you're losing them as you're perspiring. These things are critical. See, even extremely hot weather doesn't have to be a threat if you have learned and you have obeyed the rules, the laws, if you will. This is why you want to study these things and get into more depth. And of course, we do classes on that here, and you can study elsewhere for the heat. All right, people are very poorly prepared to deal with winter and cold weather on their own. We scurry from one warm box to another warm box, and we fear and dislike and curse and avoid the cold. By the way, I don't like being cold. I'm sometimes called the man who loves the cold. I don't like being cold, so I'm prepared to deal with it. People already live and work with winter all the time. So I ask them, how's it working out? Well, a lot of times they talk about being wet and cold, and there's pain and sometimes injury, and they do everything they can to avoid, I learned not to go. Don't go out there. Stay inside. Turn up the thermostat. Hang around the stove and stay warm. Well, how about you? How's it going? What's your attitude about cold weather and winter? The thing is, we try to rely upon things that people are selling us, the manufacturers and the marketers of things. And I'm pretty blunt about this stuff. And then other classes, we dig into it in the clothing class in the great depth. But I want to give you an idea right here, and I'm just blunt. Either the manufacturers and marketers do not understand that these things, or they simply lie about them. Sounds a little harsh, but it's true. What we're talking about is, what really is insulation and how does it work? About managing moisture. There's all this lip service given to breathability and those kinds of things. They have no clue how to actually do it. The actual performance of clothing, buy a sleeping bag based on the comfort rating. It's rated for 20 below zero. Sleep in one of them Hummers at 20 below zero. Your teeth are chattering usually. How do they rate this stuff? How to stay warm and dry. They try to sell you all kinds of things that really don't work, like waterproofing and waterproof breathable, and they do not understand the rules. So clothing is your personal portable shelter. It has to be right. And my message is that when things go wrong, you can be prepared. You don't have to be threatened. It doesn't even have to be unpleasant. So why clothing? Well, it's because things happen. They happen at home. They happen in the bush. They happen on the road. They happen usually unexpectedly. Boy, I didn't think that was going to happen. Lose the power for 6 weeks in the dead of winter. It's happened before. Areas with ice storms, there's been some places where there's been no electricity available to people, and some of the New England areas and upstate New York and those for 4, 5, and 6 weeks at a time. And they happen just because they do. My cars break in the cold. They get stuck. I get stranded. Avalanches, roads, blizzards, all kinds of things like that. It can happen at home, on the way to work, on the way back from work, stranded at home. No, houses break, things fall down, and earthquakes and extreme winds. The utilities are off. It's not a good time to be standing around the thermostat staring at it saying, now, Martha, what are we going to do? Because what you can face when conditions are very severe, you have some winter injury threats. And really it's about avoiding these cold weather injuries. There's 4 primary ones that we talk about that are direct cold injuries: hypothermia, frostbite, snow blindness, and trench foot. Now again, I don't have time to dig into these in this class. This is to give you the idea that clothing is critically important. You need to be properly prepared. Frostbite. This thing about frostbite, well, what's frostbite? Well, frozen flesh that's still connected to your body. It's not a good idea. These are ugly pictures. You don't want to go here. Now, because there's medical help that's available to these people, they may in fact not lose fingers and toes and feet. But if there is no help, then it becomes very serious. It actually becomes deadly because of the infection from that flesh, you see, that has been killed, it's been damaged. Properly treated frostbite, very often you don't have to lose fingers and toes, but if you don't handle it while it's frozen properly and then thawed properly and then treated properly afterwards, then you have this infection that can set in. Now, if you're in the hospital and there's amputation and antibiotics and all these things to keep you from going septic from head to foot, you can make it. But if the medical services are not available to you, boy, you just need to avoid this one because it can be deadly in a hurry. Hypothermia. Hypothermia is one of the most deadly things that you face during emergencies. And it doesn't have to be the dead of winter. It doesn't have to be below zero. We lose more people to frostbite above freezing than we do below zero. So you see, hypothermia is not respected. They call it the killer of the ignorant and the unprepared. Some simple thoughts you need to understand about this and study them and dig into. Hypothermia is a bigger threat above freezing than below zero. You see, one of the reasons we don't respect hypothermia is, well, how many people have experienced minor hypothermia? When I do the live classes, I say, okay, how many people have been in hypothermia? 3 or 4 hands go up. I say, okay, how many people have ever shivered in your life? Everybody puts their hands up. Everybody shivered. Well, that's minor hypothermia. Your body's responding properly to a situation and shivering. But you need to know the symptoms of what's happening is this is deepening. You need to know how to act and when to act properly, because, and you don't have to have internal core temperature measurements going on. You just understand the symptoms and know what's happening. Shivering, the first level of shivering is mild hypothermia. As shivering deepens, you move from what I call voluntary shivering, where you can turn the shivering off, to where it becomes involuntary and you can't stop shivering. That's serious, because the next thing that happens is you stop shivering. The next thing after that is you go into a coma. The next thing that happens is you're dead, unless somebody's rescuing you. So understanding these symptoms, recognizing, knowing what to do about them properly, avoiding hypothermia is critical. I know hypothermia from the inside out. I've been in serious hypothermia. I nearly lost my life in January of 1971. A story in that I won't tell you right now, but I really should not have survived that trip. It should have cost me my life. I was fortunate, lucky, and because of those personal beatitudes that I didn't understand back there, there was one reason why I made it through. You need to go to my other classes and understand that one so you'll know how to get through this stuff. I've had scientific comparisons of the clothing that's put me into serious hypothermia. Resolute Bay, Northwest Territories, 1,000 miles north of the Arctic Circle, out there, living out there in clothing, comparing it. We have thermocouples on the body. We've got them on our feet. We have them on our shoulders, our backs, our thighs. We're taking internal core temperatures. We can read these things. And I'm in the standard layering system with the Gore-Tex and the fleece and the Thinsulates and all these wonderful things that people sell you. And here's a shoulder temperature. Doesn't look all that dramatic. Kind of takes a dip on the 4th day. When I'm in EQUEX, extreme cold weather clothing system of the military, PALS on the right, which is what I talk about here. We'll go into in depth. A little dip in the shoulder temperature doesn't look all that bad. Let's throw on to it foot temperature. This is a little more dramatic. E stands for periods of exercise. And on the 4th day, I get my foot temperature up to 59.5 degrees. Man, that is pain. Now then you put on core temperature, you see exactly what's going on. And during the first 4 days when I'm wearing this kind of traditional layered system, all these wonderful high-tech things, I'm losing the battle. And the core temperature is going down. My life is about to be threatened had I not changed clothing on the beginning of the 5th day, and I put on that goofy, homemade-looking clothing right there, and core temperature rebounds, and I'm stabilized. I have no threat because of it. I see the clothing made all the difference in the world, is the bottom line. If we were living under exactly the same conditions outside all the time, the clothing is what made all the difference. Technical and performance testing has been done, lots of these things in cold chambers and cold boxes, so we could have an understanding what performance is and how and why it works. with thermocouples in controlled settings so you can go outside in very uncontrolled settings, not just myself, but hundreds of other people. And out of this experience has come the system of principles and practices and material things that's called PALS, Phillips Arctic Living System. Now, for severe conditions we're talking about, winter and extreme cold, and it just need not be a threat. When the temperatures, the air temperature, both sensible or wind chill, are below zero for even for short periods of time, you need to have, really high performance clothing. If you're going to have extended outside living with exposure to the elements where the temperatures is colder than, just around 20 degrees above zero, sensible or wind chill. If you're staying out there for extended periods of time, day after day, if you're going to be sleeping outside in the elements with wind and snow and temperatures colder than 20 degrees, and if you have the possibility or the need for living where you may not have fire and shelter, then that's when you need this thing we call PALS, the Phillips Arctic Living System. Exposed colder than 20 degrees, wind chill below zero, extended periods outside even well above zero, no fire, no shelter, you need PALS. And you see, when we're talking about PALS, it consists of these key areas. First off, understand we're talking system. It's not just a thing, it's a system. It is about foam clothing, and sometimes people think, oh, it's the foam clothing. No, it's much more than that. It's the practical skills, it's the winter living doctrine, it's understanding of the cold and the body's response to the cold, and it is critically important confidence that's based on experience. What are we saying there? Knowledge. You know that you know. It isn't like, okay, I watched the video, I made some stuff, it's in the closet, yeah, I'll be okay. You got to know that you will be okay. What I'm talking about is not a theory. There's decades of experience and research behind what I'm sharing with you. And what I want to do is change your current experiences and the expectations of winter, shall we say the attitudes about cold weather and winter, to give you something that has a very different outcome, because we're going to do some things differently, and it's based on principles which quite frankly are understood by very few people and practiced by even less. I do not follow, and we will not teach you to follow the traditions and habits of men or companies that are trying to sell you what it is that they make. PALS is a method that's based on the laws of nature, the physics and the physiology of how and why things really work. So there's 9 key areas, and these are part of the principles here. And by the way, there's more than this 9, but these are the easiest ones to identify and talk about for most people. Number 1, you can be exposed to temperatures below zero or wind chill below zero 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with PALS. It gives you that kind of performance. You do have to have an understanding of what insulation truly is, what it really is, and how and why it works, what the materials are, what you're looking for, and why. Part of the reason for that is maybe you don't have the perfect ideal things. Maybe you have to take your pocket knife like I showed you earlier and go cut something up. What are you looking for? So you want to understand insulation. Waterproofing will kill you in the cold. Waterproofing is deadly dangerous. Now, when it's above freezing and there's sleet and rain, waterproofing is a wonderful thing to have. But below freezing and below zero, waterproofing is hazardous. It's very, very dangerous. Matter of fact, the other thing is waterproof breathable is a myth, and they sell tons of it. It makes a lot of people a lot of money. It's the waterproof breathable Gore-Tex. And by the way, Gore-Tex is a wonderful material. It has its place. I have some, and you have to know when to use it and when not to use it. Well below freezing, there is no value in waterproof breathable because it's not breathable enough. You have to treat it just like waterproofing. Hydrophilic materials are deadly. What are the hydrophilic materials? Well, hydrophilic. Hydro is water, philic means affinity for or love or like of, so we're talking about materials. We call it death cloth. It's made from cotton, so you don't want anything to do with cotton in the cold and extreme cold. Down is absolutely beautiful, wonderful stuff, but when it gets wet, it's absolutely a catastrophe. That's the thing that nearly cost me my life back in 1971. And then the one this is the one that's traditionally talked about, and there's a wives' tale around it. The wives' tale says this, that wool's the best thing to use because it's warm when wet. Okay, well, that's a wives' tale because that's just part of the truth. Now, when you're talking about the natural materials, cotton, wool, and down, please go for the wool because it's far better than the other two. But compared to some of the other things, Once it gets wet, it is dismal, and it takes a huge amount of heat over a long period of time to get it to dry out. It's slow. Wool is slow on the uptake of water, but once it's in there, it's terrible. Here's one. Layering. You need to go beyond the limits of layering. By the way, we layer all the time. We're using it all the time. Layering is taught like it's a religion, and if you go against it, you're going to like die. Well, layering will get you in trouble. You saw the pictures of me in there. I have layers on of things that are, and I have the waterproof, breathable on, and all those things, and all these wonderful layers on. If I had had to stay in that EQUEX system for one more day, my core temperature would have matched the outside air temperature, and that's not a good idea usually, unless it's 98 degrees outside. Then matching it's no big deal. So you've got to learn to go along beyond the limits of layering, because layers have limits, and layers will always collect moisture in between the layers. I don't care what they're made out of, so you have to be very good at knowing how to take care of them. You have to learn how to do that. We actually use a mono-layer system, one layer of insulation. That's all on the right materials, and no waterproofing, no waterproof breathable, and those kinds of things. By golly, it takes care of you, even the extremes, and when you get wet, you dry out automatically just because it exists. The possibilities are amazing. The physiological response of the body to the cold. I showed you a graph of that a little while ago. When you saw the hypothermia curve and those things, that was proper response from my body and what my feet and my hands were doing. Hydration, we talked about that in heat. What most people don't understand is that you dehydrate just as rapidly in the cold as you do in the heat. At 20 below zero, you dehydrate like it's 120 above zero, and if you don't stay hydrated, you go into hypothermia. Dehydration is the primary trigger to hypothermia in the cold. You need to understand that, how to take care of that. And knowledge is not optional, meaning experience. Remember I said that's a part of the whole PALS concept? You need to go out there and play with the stuff so you know that you know that you know. Okay, PALS is a part of your total wonderful preparedness. And remember that we're not just talking about the foam clothing, as some people through the years, because I've been teaching this for a long time, they go like, well, I got my PALS because I got my foam clothing. Well, if you don't have the other parts of the system, the foam clothing will not get you through, because I will teach you how to freeze to death in properly made PALS clothing. I can teach you how to have cold feet in it. So if you can know how to have cold feet, you can also know how to have warm feet. You need to understand the rules. You need to either buy or build the PALS clothing and then learn the rest of the system. So you get correct instruction. You get some of the simple tools. They're really simple, and they're not terribly expensive to have them. And you get the right materials. Now here's a big one. Boy, do people make mistakes in the material areas, and there's all kinds of bad information floating around. So you got to be sure you go back to the source, get the right materials, develop the simple skills on how to make things, and you can build your mittens and your hats and your footwear, your mucklucks. And you know, I've got hundreds of students, thousands of students have done this, make the whole clothing from head to foot. Those pictures on the right, those are all homemade, made by those people in the pictures. And then you get the right experience from people who've lived it and can teach you these things. When I do that, when we do it, we call it Snow College, because we want you out there in the snow getting your degree. Here at Snow College on February 5th of 2010, that's the alumni out there. And these are all first-timers out there with PALS, and a marvelous setting out there. In fact, if you want to learn more about it, this couple right here who are so helpful to us in what we're doing, working in the background and in the foreground, creating things and making them happen, Jim and Connie Cheney. Go to safeharboralliance.com and listen to what others say about Winter Without Worries, because there you get to hear the Jim and Connie story of their Snow College experience. And they were back again in February 24 and 25, 2012, where we got really lucky on that one. We had an extreme blizzard out there just because they happen. And there is no upper or lower age limit to these things, but you need to know that you're okay. Okay, but I'm not going snow camping because that's really a dumb idea. Why would I do that? I'm going to stay home. At least that's the plan, and you can make all the reasons here. I live in Arizona and Georgia and Florida and Hawaii and places like that. I'm never going snow camping. I'll always have an RV, and I've got a furnace in the thing, or I have this tent. You know, I've got my evacuation tent. It has a stove in it. I'll just move to a warm place. All those are good ideas, but can you guarantee that it will always be that way? Can you guarantee that you'll always have fuel for the furnace, for the stove, the propane tanks, the wood, and those kinds of things, for less severe conditions? Now, we'll talk about that for a moment, because maybe you really don't want to go snow camping, or maybe you are going to live in an area, and so less rigorous conditions, like at home or a permanent shelter, where you're not out in the sleet and the wind and the snow, and where you can get comfortable rest and the temperatures are above zero. It's like it's home. The utilities are off in the dead of winter, and the house is chilly. The house is, 40 degrees, 35 degrees. In our area here where I live, if I had no utilities, my inside air temperature of my house, without any backup or wood-burning stove, it might drop down to as cold as 10 degrees in the house. But I'm not outside in the, 5 or 10 below zero wind that's blowing out there. A lot of people think in terms of, well, it's having a wood-burning stove. And here's an individual in upstate New York that I visited. He lives in a wood lot, and he's cutting down his trees all the time that are dying, and he's got this barn full of wood, and he's got a couple of wood-burning stoves. That's great. How many people actually have that and can do that? So what's the reality? Well, auxiliary backup heat, for most households, even for a short period of time, we might talk about a week or two, it just doesn't work, and most people are not prepared to do that. They don't have what it takes. For long term, this kind of heat is literally impossible. You can't do it. See, does your house care if it's warm or cold? We're focused on the house for just a moment. So is there a solution? Well, it's really not about having a warm house in it. It's about keeping you warm. You see, a warm house is a cultural habit. It's a wonderful thing, and I like my lifestyle. I enjoy it a great deal, but it's not about having a warm house. It's about keeping you warm, and the only realistic long-term, continuous long-term way to do that is with proper clothing. So in the less rigorous situations where we can use the half-inch open cell foam, we call them thermal johns, or if you make them at home, we call them the inner thermal liners, and they can be worn continuously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, changing the outer shell when you know how to use it properly, have the right kinds of materials on the outside. They do a fantastic job, and you can learn to make them yourself, as Karen did. I think she told me she outfitted 32 members of her family, and this is using half-inch of the open cell foam. Now, the thermal jots or inner thermal liners, or whatever you want to call this half-inch, will not let you do what PALS clothing is. It's not the PALS system. It is less than the extremes. So the ideal use for the half-inch is, well, permanent shelter, such as a home, out of the elements, out of the wind and snow, in temperatures that are above zero. It can be worn continuously in an unheated house. Now, you may work outside. This stuff works tremendously well, the half-inch, outside at 5, 10, 15 below zero while you're active and working out there in low activity for short periods of time, but you're not staying continuously out there. You're coming inside, maybe even to an unheated house, where the temperatures are 35 degrees, and it's wonderful. Of course, you have to have equivalent protection for your head, your hands, your feet. And then you have, well, a 2-year supply of fuel for these whole collection of people's, this pile right there that's on a table, because you're not going to have to worry about keeping your house warm. You might be doing a little bit of cooking, a little bit of lighting and things like that. You're using the clothing to take care of you. Well, which should I have? People ask me this all the time. Do I want the half-inch thermal johns or inner thermal liners or the 1-inch PALS? I believe the answer is yes, you do want them, because you want them for both situations. When you're exposed in the less rigorous conditions, the half-inch, I use it constantly throughout the winter. It's with me all the time. When I go out in the more severe conditions, the half-inch is not going to do it. Where I'm living outside minus 50 to plus 20 wind chill, exposed below zero, as sleeping outside, no fire, no shelter, that's when you need the PAL system. The foam clothing, which is 1-inch, the practical skills, the winter living doctrine, understanding of the cold, and confidence because you've worked up to it slowly and in stages safely to where you know you can go through the extremes. Things that you can do, and things that I've been able to do, and it's not just me, we've had other people with us. We take them out there to live in these conditions. You know, this picture in the upper left-hand corner, that's Wolf Creek Pass, Colorado. It was 42 below zero that night, sleeping right outside. And when the cars get stuck or stranded, it's having the things with you. It's just not a threat. Or in this extreme blizzard, this last February, where the visibility just dropped to just a few feet out there, 80+ mile an hour winds, 13 degrees Fahrenheit. And, we're kind of stuck on the mountain there a little bit. It took a long time to get off there because it just was that way. But nobody was threatened. Nobody was hurt. There was no suffering at all. It's inconvenient as heck, but, man, it's an extraordinary experience as long as you're safe. Winter, snow, and cold weather can and should be an ally rather than a threat. So is there any doubt that clothing is a preparedness parachute? Now, you can learn more about these things. Go online. Right there at Safe Harbor Alliance in that archive area, there's weather happens. People are poorly prepared to live without shelter and or utilities, and there's a little more time to focus on the clothing area right there. You can just log in and watch that. No cost for that. There's a DVD. This is part 2 in the Self-Reliance series. It's on clothing. It's a 2-hour, 20-minute principle-based DVD to walk you through even more of these things that I've had time to do here. And of course, I already mentioned you can go right to the website and listen to the Jim and Connie story about what others have to say about Winter Without Worries. There's also, as you see right there, there is the history of PALS, much greater depth. It's 45 minutes right on the PALS clothing only. All right, the third black hole that if you get sucked into this one. I was talking to a really good friend of mine just a few days ago. He called me and he was writing up a letter, kind of a document he wanted to explain to, I guess, friends and family some things. He asked me, what are the 5 biggest things that will get people in trouble? I said, well, that's easy. The first 3, I call them the 3 black holes. And then we went on to some other things, but this third black hole actually is the biggest one because people are so ignorant of it. I call it a hidden disaster that few people recognize. Now, attitude's actually the biggest one, but people won't even catch on to that one a lot of the time. Clothing kind of gets sloughed over because I've got some cold weather clothing and I haven't really suffered very much with it necessarily. Maybe this one will help you understand that this hidden disaster is absolutely extraordinarily dangerous. In fact, if we're talking about sanitation, why is it so important? It's so important because most people, they don't get it. They're clueless. Putting it in perspective, and in the full sanitation class, I can dig into this a lot deeper. Our health and life expectancy, and this has significantly improved during the 20th century. And generally, it's antibiotics and medications, and hospitals get all the credit. But the credit really goes to 85, 90, 95% of our improved lifestyle and health and well-being. It's all about sanitation. And it's absolutely just skipped over. We don't recognize it, and so little is taught about it that it leaves us thinking that sanitation's whole home. By the way, and besides that, it's a dirty topic. It's like ugly. Okay, sanitation is vitally important because where sanitation is poor, disease and death run rampant. Sanitation is vitally important. And gratefully, in the U.S., we've had very little experience with sanitation breakdowns. As we've got our systems up and running, and they run automatically and take care of us, that we just don't recognize the problem. And that's a blessing on the one hand because we haven't been dealing with it like the people in Haiti. Before the earthquake, they were dealing with sanitation issues all over the place, but they were dealing with them. Here we don't. What that means is when we have a breakdown, it's going to catch an awful lot of people completely off guard, and they'll be in big trouble. See, following a disaster, if you get this wrong, you simply die. The emergencies and disasters, things break down. We're talking about this infrastructure of the water and sewer and electricity and transportation, medical services, and the waste collection that goes on, and the insect and vermin control. During disasters, people can break down because of physical stress, emotional stress. You don't get good rest necessarily. Your life is upside down. You might have poor and inadequate nutrition, and then you've got all this environment that's overloaded with microbes and viruses and bacteria and parasites, and the immune system is simply overloaded and it collapses. What we're talking about is stopping the rampant spread of this list of nasty things right here, but the big ones, cholera, typhoid, dysentery, have killed hundreds of millions of people throughout the generations. See, today a minor injury or sickness is not an issue because, well, with normal stresses around us, physical, mental, emotional, we have a functioning sanitation system, so the system is kept clean, our environment's generally clean. We have a functioning healthcare system. If something, is going wrong, we just go get some help. But during a disaster, when the stress is high and when the systems are all down and the environment is contaminated, minor injuries or sickness can become deadly. So prevention is vital, and being prepared to prevent them, understanding what you have to do, is extremely critical. Because when things really break down, it will be up to you. You hope, this dependency I talked about in the very beginning. Well, the Red Cross always comes, the National Guard and FEMA and the other relief agencies, they're coming. Well, they might be coming, but they might not be able to get to you. They may want to get to you, but they may be in as much trouble as you're in, and they just can't do it. So actions now will determine your outcome. And here again, your preparation is vital. This infrastructure, this wonderful, miraculous infrastructure of power and water and communications and transportation and all these things that go on around us, when they break down because of a variety of things, pandemic, everybody sheltered in place, a nuclear event, civil unrest, or breakdown because of economic problems, and this infrastructure starts to fail, and it's a cascade of things, little minor problems, because maybe people are not at work and you don't have the maintenance personnel, the operating personnel, and when one of these systems goes down, it takes down the other one. When the power is down, the pumps don't work. When the communication is down, we're not communicating that you need to do something and turn things on and off that's communicated through the internet. We'll start with the worst of our sanitation issues first, and that's one very simply that you and I have control over, and we're talking about human waste. Most sanitation stuff is kind of socially undiscussable because, well, it's a dirty topic, and we don't sit around the table and discuss sanitation things. It's taken care of. It's out of sight, out of mind. You flip the lever on the porcelain throne and all that ugly stuff disappears. So we don't talk about it, but I deal with it, and in the full classes we have a lot of time to deal with it, 4 hours as a matter of fact. My message is simple. It's this: get over it and deal with it, because failure to do so can kill you. So we have to take these things head on, and that's not to be melodramatic. It's just reality is the bottom line. Human waste issues, we're going to go from the least hazardous to the most hazardous. The least hazardous, top of the list, is urine. As a matter of fact, urine's actually a resource. It's something that maybe you want to learn to not even throw away now. Perhaps that's a little weird, might be a little over the top for some people, but I do teach a class that's entitled Urine. Wonderful resource. We have garbage. We're talking the organic kinds of things and some of the waste things that we have, that there may be toxins and contaminants and or things that draw vermin. But the big one, the real killer, is the fecal matter. The solid waste of the human bowel is laced with all kinds of bacteria, viruses, and parasites that, unleashed in the environment, spreads disease. And a lot of people may be carriers of these things and they're not sick. You look at the statistics of what's been going on in Haiti. We have an absolute cholera catastrophe that's been happening down there. You have 10% of the population, that's 1 million people, 10% of the population that's estimated, or more than that, are infected with cholera. Only 20% of those people are clinical, meaning that they have symptoms, so they're being treated. You have 80% of them running around as carriers that keep dumping the stuff into the environment, so it keeps it all lit up and alive down there. It's going to take generations to clean that mess up down there. So it's a very hidden problem. So when the system is disrupted, the responsibility is yours, and you have to learn to think upstream and downstream and take responsibility, understand when you need to do that, take immediate action, and you have to think community now. To get others ready, you help other people now, and you have to be ready to help in the future, because if the people around you are sick and dead and dying, guess what? It's going to get to you. So it is important that we learn how to handle these things. So if the system breaks down, this thing that probably every one of you has, what are you going to do about it when it's not working? You see, when the infrastructure that supplies things to us, that allows us to have these wonderful conveniences, when they are disappearing or going away, what do you do? And most people normally think of their backup. It's like, okay, pit latrine, outhouse, Grandma, Grandpa had one on the farm. Most people may have used those at one time, and where you have a very, dispersed population, you can get away with that. However, this is what Haiti has done out there. It's slit trenches and pit latrines and outhouses, and we have an absolute disease catastrophe going on down there because things were not handled properly. A lot of people have an RV, and you got a holding tank. I got this 50-gallon tank in there, and I have water to flush it. Well, that's great. And if it's a short-term event, go ahead and use the thing. But if it's going to be a long-term event, now you have this 50 gallons of really ugly, we call it black water, it's sewage water, and you got all those things. What do you do with the darn stuff? Unfortunately, what some people are going to do is just kind of drive out a little ways and open up the dump valve and spread it along the road, and we have Haiti all over the place. We have the chemical toilets and the porta potties, the blue water stuff here. Okay, great. Now you got to pick all this stuff. Okay, what do you do with all this pickled stuff that's in this blue water? And then you've just got the bushes. The body needs to do what it's got to do. And you've got to take proper actions quickly early on, learn what they are. So I'm going to give you the sewer down solution key concepts, because this is just an overview very quickly, and it's about principles. There's a 4-hour series of DVDs on sanitation that you'll really want to get. There's also one you can watch online that's an hour. They'll go into it a little bit more. Key concepts: keep the urine separate from the fecal matter, because we're going to handle and dispose each one of them differently. You see, the urine is safe and easy to work with. We don't spread disease through urine. Urine is a very valuable resource, and there may be a time when you really want to use it, because we're talking fertilizer here. It's high in nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium, the things that you go down and pay good money for. As a matter of fact, the key component, other than water's the majority of it in there, but the major component is urea, which is what you're buying when you go buy your commercial fertilizer. You are a fertilizer factory. Learn to use it properly. Okay, there's going to be less weight and volume in disposing of the waste if you'll keep the liquid part of it separate as much as you possibly can. You have less contamination if you spill things, if everything's going into one pot, so to speak, and you don't have a soupy, sloshy mess, and it keeps the odor down to keep them separate. So that's key concept number one: keep the urine separate from the fecal matter, handle them differently. Now then, key concept number two is you have to have a safe long-term, emphasis on long-term and safe, method of properly disposing of the fecal matter. This poop we don't like to talk about, because you see the fecal matter is very dangerous because of all of the parasites and bacteria, viruses in it. You have to be properly prepared in advance, have the right tools and supplies, materials, experience, and understanding, because if you get this wrong, people get sick and die. You have to practice and know that you can do this and have what it takes beforehand. You have to keep the urine from being mixed in, as already talked about. And if you want to, let's go to the real principle base on this. Let's go to He who made this place. Deuteronomy 23:13. Look it up. Deuteronomy 23:13. In fact, here it is. And thou shalt have a paddle upon thy weapon, and it shall be, when thou wilt ease thyself abroad, thou shalt dig therewith, and shalt turn back and cover that which cometh from thee. You see, the soil properly handled, and the waste properly handled and disposed of in the soil, not in the water, but in the soil. And you have, I'll say, kind of three options. You have the manual Deuteronomy 23:13 system, which is the minimum one that you should have, because you can put that into place very, very quickly with the minimum of tools and things. I spend a good half hour on that or more in the sanitation tapes. You can have a personal septic system as long as it isn't damaged and you have a source of water, which can be gray water. That would be properly disposing of it. But if you have to leave that home, because that's not very portable, you also have the composting toilet approach, both ones that are above floor that sit on the floor and those that are built in very large systems. Those are your three primary approaches, methods of doing this when your flush toilet does not work. So following a disaster, it's extremely important that you have a foolproof method, one that you know will work, because if you get this wrong, you spread disease. Some other key areas in sanitation to take a look at. Number one, you've got to protect your home environment. If you're tied to a municipal sewer system and you have a basement, you're at threat of having a backup in that basement when pumps fail, lines become clogged, and or it's overloaded with floodwaters and rainwaters. It all backs up in your basement. Now you have to abandon your house. You need to have that methods of stopping that from occurring. It's very important that you understand how to keep things cleaned up, that you have the tools and supplies that you can use, and sanitizers and cleaners, and options for sanitizers and cleaners, and things that you can store for very long periods of time. And when you run out of one thing, what can I use instead of that you would already have? And having these things economically in place. Personal hygiene, and please understand that hand soap, bar soap can spread disease. You're better off with liquid soaps because, number one, bacteria will live on the bar soap. The fatty acids that they're made with, they can, and when they're damp and they're on top of it, somebody washed their hands or sneezed on it, and you don't have a lot of water in emergencies. You're not flushing things like crazy with all this water, so you leave some bacteria on there and they multiply. Somebody else comes along and picks them up. Those are not good sanitizers. If you're using a liquid soap, you're going to be pumping it out or squeezing it out. You're less likely to get it contaminated in the first place. And liquid soaps, the bacteria just don't live in them very well. Personal protection is another one of these things to keep from getting these sanitation issues spread onto your body. And that even includes insect kinds of protection. So the mosquito netting becomes important. And the pest and vermin control, because in our systems right now where we have the population, we have the vermin suppression going on, there aren't that many, but by golly, when the garbage is out and when you don't have the suppression and the population may be less dense because people have left, there's not many people, mice and rats and flies will explode dramatically and they can spread disease. Is there any doubt that sanitation is a preparedness parachute? You can learn more about these things. The Hidden Disaster, it's online, it's free. Sanitation Class 4001, Failed Sanitation Will Catch and Kill the Ignorant Unprepared. So you can go right there to Safe Harbor in the library and in the webcast, the past webcast, and it's right there available for you now where there's more time. And then there's a 4 DVD set, 4 hours. So the conclusion of this is there are 3 black holes. The 3 black holes are, number 1, attitude, number 2, clothing, and number 3, sanitation. And perhaps sanitation is the one that most people can start to get their head around because it hasn't been thought about. But those other 2, if you're not properly prepared in that foundation area with your attitude, clothing because shelter and utilities are not working all that well, sanitation. By the way, water, the lack of proper water and sanitary water, that'll get you in trouble. You've got to take care of your nutrition. Shelter is important, all kinds of wellness-ish tools and supplies. These others will get you eventually, but the 3 black holes are the ones that get you first, probably, for most people. So the question is this all just a bunch of negative and gloom and doom talk, or can you say that without reservation, this is a part of provident living? Because some people go like, well, it can't get that bad. Well, can you afford to be wrong? What you need to do is put yourself in a position where you do all this preparation and then you hope and pray nothing happens. I'll be thrilled if nothing bad happens because I can afford to be wrong. If you're saying nothing is going to happen, I don't need to worry about it, you know, I've got FEMA and Red Cross and those people and they're going to show up. You have to be right. You can't afford to be wrong. Otherwise, it's going to be tough. Be lots of suffering. So how you feel about your future is in your hands, is the bottom line. You know, the choice is yours. You can either choose to live providently, and if you don't choose to live providently, then you've chosen to become a victim. Whatever happens, and you hope that somebody will come along and save you, because here's the truth about life. There's no doubt that tomorrow will come. There's no dispute that things happen. But how you're prepared to meet tomorrow will make all the difference in the world. If you're prepared for the worst, then no matter what happens, it will be an adventure. And I believe we structure our lives so there'll be an adventure. And true preparedness has to be based on principles, understanding of how and why things work, not just lists of things to have and buy and stuff to carry around the trunk of your car. By the way, you should have things in the trunk of your car and in your basement and in your closets, but what you know is more important than what you have. And so what you do is you understand that provident living is a preparedness lifestyle. And it's where you're playing with things and having fun and testing and trying and experimenting and doing weird things. And I do strange things every now and then because I wonder, what if? And how and why does it work? And is this really true? And I see something on the internet and I go, is that really true? That seems a little weird. And some of those things I debunk in other classes about putting, you have a kerosene lamp and you can put vegetable oil in it, olive oil, and it'll work. It does not work except for a few minutes. We do that in the light class. So I like to play with things, not just take somebody's word for it. Don't take my word for any of this stuff. You go learn so that you know that you know. Well, prepare to survive no matter what we've been talking about, and you do that by getting your attitude straight, and you take care of these 3 black holes. And I'd recommend that you go to the website, watch some of these other things there, get some of the DVDs that we have to offer, and of course, the ball is always in your court, as it is for each one of us in our own households. We will do our best at Safe Harbor to teach you as many things as we can, and there's free classes every week. The internet audio cast on Tuesday nights. The internet video cast that you're participating in right now on Wednesday nights. There's a free public video archive. There's a number of these things, more than a dozen of them that are available right now, and more coming that you can link into and send people to and help your neighbors get prepared. And then we have a newsletter that you can join us at Safe Harbor Alliance. These are things that are available for you to take advantage of. So thank you for your interest, your feedback, and all of those that have attended. And I will see you, or at least I will be talking to you next week. Have yourself a great week and a great weekend and the rest of your life. This is Jim Phillips, and good night.